Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Healing PlayHouse, a place where we nurture community, share truth, and discuss all things healing. I am your host, Edwina Nunez from Awaken Your Power. And in this episode, I invited yoga therapist and author Sariah Bastian to speak to us about the impact of trauma on the body. Tune in as Sariah shares her own journey and insights into how changing the relationship with your body can lead to safety, deeper healing, and a more authentic and fuller way of living. We hope that the information that we share resonates with you as you navigate your own healing journey. And without further ado, I welcome you to the Healing PlayHouse. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us in another episode of the Healing PlayHouse. Today, I have with me the amazing Sariah Bastian, who I am so excited to have here. And I know I'm going to say that at the beginning of every episode because I am truly excited about my guests and really sharing all the amazing knowledge and expertise that they bring to the table. So Sariah is a yoga therapist and author of Beyond Breath, Change Your Body, Change Your Breath, Change Your Life. And I have to say that me working with Sariah has definitely changed my life. And I'll touch a little bit about that. And Sariah will go into some of the work that she does. But before we do that, I want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself and her professional experience and who she works with.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me on the show. I really am happy to be here. And like I was just saying before you pressed record, like so proud of you for stepping into this. So it's such a cool thing. So my name is Sariah Bastian. I'm a yoga therapist, just like Edwina said. And, I have worked in the field of betrayal trauma and sexual addiction recovery from infidelity, pornography, masturbation, massage parlors, full-blown emotional affairs, physical affairs with the wife part of it, where these women are stuck in a situation where they can't move forward in their relationships. They're at a standstill and paralyzed in an indecision of what their husband is doing. If he's really being faithful, if he's speaking truth, if he's trying recovery, if he's really choosing her, right? And they have all these questions and fears, and they kind of get stuck policing and monitoring and watching and waiting and standing by the sidelines of their relationship for years and years and years. And so I've created a program and have taught the program since 2014 called Beyond Breath that I help women in that situation heal their trauma brain, because all that action and the energy put in that fear space is just a way that their brain is now wired, being hijacked from the betrayal that they've experienced. And so I help them heal their trauma brain and regain ownership of themselves, so that they find control over the sensations and the thoughts and the loud fears that they have controlling them, and they can reclaim their life and their relationship. So I've worked under clinical directors who are certified sex addiction therapists, specialized in EMDR, neurofeedback, CBT, EFT, ART therapies, like all of the therapies. And what they found, and as Bessel van der Kolk has done the research behind that, trauma lives in your body. And the clinical doctor that I worked under for years knew this as the important step to the healing that he could offer his clients, is that the women that he worked with needed to heal their trauma brain before they stepped into work with him, so that the work that he did as a therapist would be beneficial and helpful.
Thank you, Sariah. It's amazing how the body works and what it remembers, because as I'm hearing you describe things, I can feel the sensations in my body. Even though right now I'm not in that space anymore, but it's almost like my body can remember what it felt like being in that space. The body is just an amazing tool. I feel like society, we're conditioned from very little to kind of see our body as an adversary, and really not nourishing a relationship with our body and honoring and protecting it and really seeing it as a tool that's providing so much information. I think that was just as you're describing, I just felt it in my body. So I worked with Sariah. I took your program in 2020, at least spring of 2020. And like you stated, up until that point, I had been doing just a lot of cognitive work, working with a therapist, working in support groups, reading every book that I could find, listening to podcasts. That was kind of like my trauma response, and how I used to deal with things was just binge information.
Yep.
Because I wanted to understand, I wanted to process, the answers were in the information. And what I realized was that, yes, I mean, I was understanding a lot more, but I just wasn't moving past the sensations and the trauma that my body was in. And when I found your program, I was doing an 8-month support program through Bloom for Women, which is an amazing resource. But I knew that I needed something else. In episode number 1, I went through my journey and I talked about trigger days. And for me, the way that I discovered what was going on was a very visual discovery. And what that did to my body, I mean, I was having a massive physical trigger response for a span of a week every single month. When the days would come, my body was just kind of locked in, and it was kind of preparing for war. So up until I found your program, I was just managing. I was just looking for ways to survive that week. And I kind of knew intuitively that I needed to do something else. And I came across your program, and it literally changed my life, because I think for the first time I was able to see that there was another way to move through it. Like, instead of just surviving, you could actually move through it and kind of push it out of your body. So before we get into your story, because I definitely want you to share, your own story and how you found these tools and created these tools. Can you explain, the relationship between trauma and the body? Because I think as a society, we know that stress, lives in the body. If you're stressed, you go get a massage. If you're stressed, you go to the gym. But trauma is a whole other very complex. It really kind of, affects the body in different ways. So I want you to just maybe talk a little bit about the relationship of trauma and how it impacts the body.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I kind of explain this on an elementary level. So, for those of you who are well educated beyond this, then you can explain this maybe better. But what happens, and we all experience trauma, like through life. Like, sometimes we don't even realize that we've experienced trauma. Like, a divorce of your parents can be traumatic. A car accident can be traumatic. People experience sexual abuse, and that's traumatic, right? And we all experience trauma in different ways. And like you said, at the beginning, like, we're conditioned to the body is an adversary. The body is not something that you can befriend, right? Like, the answer to fix your problem is going to be through medication, or through a book, or a podcast, or something like outside of yourself, or even God, right? Like, and I love God, but like, even praying, that's supposed to fix everything. But your body is its own amazing biological, beautiful being, right? And it runs in essence to support you and protect you through this life. It's your home through this life. And this is all my belief of this, so you can take it or leave it. But as you experience trauma, and you numb, or put a Band-Aid on, or fix, all of that trauma literally gets stored in your body, and in a way sets up an unconscious program of survival for you, because you're just putting a Band-Aid on it. Like, and I can tell a little bit about my story with this, in that, like, when my parents divorced at the age of 5, I didn't see my dad very often after that. And I yearned for my dad's love, and would, wanted him to choose me over and over and over again. And unconsciously, when I put myself in a situation where I exposed myself through vulnerability and a desire to be accepted and loved by my dad, and he wasn't available to be able to do that, I built a resistance against that trauma. And that became an unconscious program that I lived in when I found my different relationships as I grew older. Okay. So the trauma that we experience is almost like an armor that we're putting on, a protection to continue to help you survive. And what, it literally changes your brain. Like, I have a client who is 32 years into her marriage, and experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder from the relationship that she's in. And she went to the Amen Clinic in California and got hooked up to the brain scans. And they said to her, like, yes, you have PTSD and like, again, like, thanks for that label. What do I do with that? And that's where again, Bessel van der Kolk talks about trauma lives in the body, and the way that your brain is running on survival mode. It's not something that we can fix by knowing, just like you tried with reading and therapy and podcasts and TED Talks. It is something that you don't even know that you're recycling through in the way that you show up in your life on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And the relationship of your mind is it's gonna show you. So, when you're, for the clients that I work with, like when your brain shows you the text that you read that found out that your husband was cheating on you, your brain's gonna keep showing you that to keep you safe. And in response to the brain image, your body responds, just like you said, like for that week, like it almost like the body closed in, like your body responds to that. And what it does is it validates, if you will, the image that your brain is showing you. And then your brain says, got it, I'm going to keep showing you these because you're in danger constantly. Yes. So we live in that pathway of survival, of anxiety, of fear. And we halfway insert ourselves into life, or we monitor our life in all essence to protect ourselves because everything is dangerous. And life doesn't happen behind those walls of fear. And for so many of us, we're boo boo beep booing. That's the robot that we just are going and we build resentment and anger, and we second guess, and we don't trust, and we like all of these things that end up showing up in our daily energy, and the way that we show up in life, the way that we interact with people, all in an essence of protecting ourselves, as if we're always in danger. When this healing takes place, you realize that you don't need those walls to protect you because you have yourself again. And it's very intentional how you move forward in your life, because that's what you have control over. So did I answer that well?
No, yes, that was a beautiful, I think, very descriptive definition. No, that was amazing. And as you were talking, I mean, again, I can resonate as I look back to where I was, because to your point, even though the trigger days were a real thing and I couldn't escape it, you can't escape days unless I'm going to sleep for an entire week. But once I became aware of what was happening, that it was almost like a cycle started, because it was almost like I was already anticipating these days the next month, and then it would trigger the cycle of anxiety and the cycle of protection. So to your point, I mean, the awareness is a good thing because at least you can understand what's going on, but in some ways it just perpetuates that whatever's going on with your body.
It can feel like there's no exit.
Exactly.
In that, right? Like I can be aware of it, and then even in that awareness, I can provide even more fear for myself of like, hey, this is coming, let me build this up, let me protect myself, because I know this is going to happen. But there are exit points that you can take to get out of those cycles, so that's not your life.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you for that definition. Yes, if you want to dive into your story, because I'm always curious about, I'm very, I was grateful that I found you, and you had created this very beautiful program that, for me, to your point, created an exit for me, not only in that cycle that I was in, but also in my healing path. Because, I was doing the work, some aspects of me were healing, but I think my path would have been so much longer had I not found your program, because, your program is such a beautiful program. It talks about not only the body, but also us as energetic beings. And that for me was just opened up a whole other path in regards to connecting to earth and grounding myself. And that in and of itself can then lead to just connecting spiritually, which is everything that I needed to just really move forward in my healing. Had I not found that, I think that would have taken me a lot longer to be where I am now. So I'm always curious in regards to your own personal journey, like what was going on for you, and and how you actually were led to find these things for yourself.
Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned, my story with my dad, and I love my dad, and we we have a relationship where I love him and I don't even know where he is or if he's even alive most of the time. But I ended up, right out of high school, getting married at the age of 19 to a man that I'd known for 3 months. And I had, because of the, programming that I'd set up within myself, like I needed to prove myself to other people and almost like take on a motherly role of I can care for you, I cook, I clean, I didn't know at the time, but I think I like sex and I try to be sexy for you. I'm going to try and be what you want me to be so that you can choose me. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I obviously wasn't aware of at the time, but looking back, I can see that I had that program running through me. And, that marriage didn't last more than a year. We're still, in friends. We don't talk because it's inappropriate at the relationship that I'm at with my husband, but there's no ill feeling towards him. I was young and he was young and we just went our separate ways. But soon after that relationship, I married, I think 3 months after the divorce of that one. And I married my boy's dad, who I was married to for 7 years. I had two sons in that marriage. And once again, like I felt like I needed to prove myself to him and try harder and try harder and try harder. And what that looked like was when he wasn't doing the things that I thought he should be doing, or he wasn't treating me the way that I thought I needed to be treated or was deserving of, I would try even harder and harder and harder to make him do something that I wanted him to do, as if like I could control him by my actions. And he suffered with mental illness. And at the age of 24, when your husband breaks down mentally and is debilitated and unable to work, like you don't really know what to do. I was gonna love like, okay, we're just gonna pick up the pieces. I'm gonna fight really hard for you. I want you to fix this. I want you to get the help you need so that you can be there for me, because I need you to be there for me. And it didn't work. And in essence, like my belief system said, he didn't choose me. I wasn't good enough. Had I only tried harder, maybe he would have tried harder for me. And anyway, I ended up divorcing him and leaving that relationship after trying to make it be what I wanted it to be, by proving myself and coming out exhausted because I didn't get the result that I wanted. And I'm very low self-esteem, very protective. And I met another man who let me continue to prove to him that I was worthy of him, and continually played the part of, I am so nice to even accept you. You are so lucky to even be in my presence. You look what I'm doing for you. You owe me this. And so I became, I played the role that I'd been playing all along, and I kept asking for the same person in return, because of the relationship that I had with my belief system of who I thought I was, and what I was worthy of or not worthy of. And he was unfaithful to me. The part that's crazy making is when there's no real evidence, and there was always evidence but not any tangible evidence, and I was so lost within myself that I didn't believe anything that I saw, and I didn't believe anything that I didn't see. And because I had lost myself so deeply in this desire of him choosing me and trying, I was put under, I allowed him to speak to me in a way that I believed him over myself. And literally, like the only way that I can describe this is like my spirit was dying. Like I was half smiling. I was always like panicking before he'd come on, like when the garage door opened, my heart would pound. I tried to make this house spotless. You know, they were my children. My boys came into that relationship. He didn't have any children. And I would try to keep them as quiet as I could and as clean as I could be with them so that they didn't bother him. Like we were all tiptoeing and walking on eggshells. And I thought I just needed to try harder. I just needed to try harder. If I was sexier, if I had a six pack, if I, you know, whatever, like maybe he'd choose me. I actually just barely had my implants removed. I got them when I was married to him because I thought that if I had larger breasts, then he wouldn't act out. And I did that in essence of changing who I was in hopes that he would choose me. And in essence, I was never chosen by him. And I realize now that it's because I didn't choose myself. And that's where this all kind of came to play. So I took my yoga therapy certification, my first round of yoga therapy in 2012 when I was married to him. And when I was there, I was like so worried about who he was talking to at home and what he was doing without me there, as if I could control him. And so I was like paying attention, but not paying attention to class. And I'd run out of class. And if there was traffic on the freeway, I'd be so pissed. And like, I knew I was going to get in trouble if I was late because he would blame me for having an affair. Like I was doing something iffy, but also I was worried about him at home. I thought if I could get home fast, I could catch him or make sure that he didn't do anything, right? Like just all the crazy thoughts that you have. And again, like I just lost myself more and more and more.
What happened? Sorry, I guess what prompted you to start doing yoga? I guess what happened within you that maybe you felt like you had to do something more, or were you just completely disconnected? Like what?
Yeah, so I'd been teaching yoga up to that point since 2006. So yoga had been in my life for a really long time. I wanted to do the yoga therapy as something just for me to do, but I didn't have any intention of, I didn't know what I was going to use it for or anything like that. So in essence, I was trying therapy. I was reading the books. I was doing things that I thought that I needed to do in order to fix our relationship. I had a great desire for our relationship to work out. I didn't want another divorce, like what's wrong with me that I keep finding myself in these situations and nothing necessarily helped, and that I was just as crazy at the beginning of my therapy as I was at the end. And then there was a moment when we were interacting, and he's a big man, and he never touched me physically, but he would push me with his nose against my nose. So he's 6'4", I'm 5'7", and he would stoop down to my level and push me up against the wall with his nose on my nose and yell at me. And something in this moment told me to feel the ground beneath my feet. And so I did. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know what the voice was. It was just my body saving me, I think, in that moment. And then something after I did that said, breathe, Sariah, breathe. And so I remember like so vividly, like just taking a breath, and then something in me said, look, just look. And all of a sudden, like everything that I'd been looking for was shown to me. My reality. Like for the first time in years, I was actually there in my body. And that was the beginning of like me seeing with clarity the truth of my reality. And I got stronger after that, in that I didn't let his words throw me. I didn't let his perception of me blindside me. Like I started seeing myself. I started holding myself differently. I started listening to the words that I was saying so they couldn't be thrown back at me. And through all of those different things, I finally realized that this marriage isn't, I either needed to choose this marriage and stay half and convince myself that it's going to be fine and just store away who I am, or I needed to choose me and not be in that relationship. And I chose me. And it feels selfish to do that, it was the beginning of I'd done therapy for years, and it was the beginning of my real healing, the real healing that needed to take place there.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And when you say, it sounds selfish, it's like, no, it doesn't. It's probably also that part of, that conditioning, especially we women have, that if we choose ourselves, to honor ourselves, that makes us selfish, when in reality, it doesn't. We're just honoring who we are. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And when you said, you just heard that voice that said, feel the ground beneath your feet, of course, that voice is your intuition, that your inner knowing, knowing what you needed in that moment. If you had to tune into your body, like what you felt in that moment, and then afterwards, when you started reconnecting with kind of yourself and really seeing what was in front of you and your relationship with your body prior to that moment, you were kind of doing everything to try to get him to accept you and be there for you. How do you describe those two different Sariahs? And
I wasn't, I tell this to people all the time, and it's so hard to use the words to describe it because it seems so surreal, but like, I wasn't living. I was so disconnected from my body, from my home, from myself. And I was just trying to premeditate and create and control everything. Like I would literally sit and be like, okay, I'm going to say this, and then he's going to say this, and then I'm going to say this. Or I'm reading this passage in this book, and I'm going to leave this on the counter. And if he sees this, and he's going to read this passage, and then that's going to wake him up. And then from there, he's going to see that I'm trying. Like I would play things out in my head that weren't real. And there was a relationship to my body that was purely sexual, in that I just thought, he needed to see me in a sexual light, and I dishonored my body in stepping into intimacy with him when I wasn't connected to him, just out of hopes again that he would choose me and that I would prove to him that I was sexy enough for him to not need another woman or not need to look at pornography. And so my body's relationship was purely a tool to have somebody choose me, as if that's all that described who I was. And now it's completely opposite. Now it's just, I just was in my car earlier today, and I'm like, that's so cool, Sariah, that you're here breathing. And I talk to myself in that crazy way all the time, but like, I'm aware of my breath all the time. I'm aware of the shape of my body. I'm aware of where I am on the earth, and I'm always connected with myself. And this is, one of the things that I teach in Beyond Breath is truth is found right here in the moment. And if I can stay here, I will always be with truth. And sometimes your truth is, please God, don't let this be truth, yes. Right? But in that, you have the choice, the conscious awareness choice, to choose your reality or to ignore it. But again, if you're seeking for that healing, there's a part of you that calls. It's like, you can't ignore it. Like it's going to keep calling at you. And whether that's through anxiety or depression or nightmares or whatever it is, like your body's going to keep talking to you until you listen, really.
Yes. And I like to reframe, it's not in your crazy voice. It's the beautiful voice that's, again, just nourishing you and kind of, bestowing love on yourself. And I thank you for opening that up, because I think oftentimes we see the body as just the body, right? That flesh and bone kind of just body. So when you mentioned just seeing your body as a tool for sex, like I think that's often our perception of what the body is, how we physically see ourselves. But there's so much more to that. And, your course goes through the chakras. And a funny story, the reason why your course to me was like, I want to try that, because you mentioned, the chakras, the 7 chakras, and how when they get blocked, how it manifests and how to move forward. And, when you have them unblocked, how does that actually look, and the conditioning, that keeps them blocked. And the first time I encountered the chakra system was 11 and a half years ago, after I had my first son, my first child. I was home, I had a C-section, was breastfeeding, didn't really have a lot of help. So you spend a lot of time on the couch with your baby watching TV. And I came across this animated series called The Avatar, The Last Airbender. It's on Netflix now. It's a beautiful series. I've watched it many, many times. And that was the first time that I saw it. And it's really about spiritual enlightenment, right? The Avatar has to master all four elements or really kind of become spiritually attuned in order to be able to harness this power and connect to his previous lives. And they talk about the chakras. So in order for him to kind of connect to this higher state of being and harness this power, he has to unblock his chakras. So when I was so in tune to this show and like my whole spirit just lit up, but I thought it was fake because it's a cartoon. This isn't real. And I probably came across the chakras again, but again, I think I was just this autopilot, just kind of living my life. And I feel like, you know, the spirit kind of calls things on you that really resonate with your soul. And then when you need it, it kind of brings it back up. So when I came across your course, I was like, oh, the chakras, oh, I remember this thing that was really kind of, you know, interesting. I want to know more. And you went through every single chakra, starting with the root chakra, and it has to do with safety and grounding. And I think for me, that started to shift my understanding and perception of what the body is. And it isn't just this kind of physical being that's just flesh and bone, but those layers are really connected with our safety, just not within ourselves, but within earth, and are just worthy of being here. And our sexuality and creativity and personal power and our hearts and our throat, our communication. So if you can just maybe, as best as you can, kind of summarize that, because I do think it's important to open up our perception of what the body really is, because we do get stuck as just seeing it as this one-dimensional thing.
Yeah. And again, just we live so much on the surface of it in that, and, you know, Western medication is amazing, right? And there's so much healing that can be found through that. But again, like so much numbing, so much cultural programming in that, you know, you're not allowed to feel, or you're not allowed to be sexual, or, you know, again, going back to that, like you need to look to God for safety. And again, like I love God, but I found God inside of me from going in here. And so, yeah, you know, and this is, you know, more based on the niche that I work with women in infidelity. But one of the main things that they're seeking for is safety. And we're taught, you know, through life to find safety outside of us. And, you know, I look at my, I have two stepchildren, younger stepchildren, who blame each other for their actions and their behaviors. Well, you made me do this, or you need to stop, you're bugging me. And I listen to those words, and that's how we're set up in the world. Like, you know, in like, I need you to make me feel safe. And if you don't, then that's your fault and not mine. And there's no responsibility here, when, you know, one of the things that I teach is the safest place you're ever going to be is right here inside of your body. And within that, you have the ability to observe your emotions as information, not a danger. They're not something that you need to shy away from. They're not something that you need to numb. They're not bad. They're not wrong. It's just information that your body's giving you from the outer world in. And when you have that solid foundation beneath you of that safety that's provided within your body, you can navigate yourself from the information that your body's telling you, versus trying to set up, you know, this is how I can describe it, like set up bright orange cones and caution tape, so as to try to, you know, if people set up boundaries like, well, when I'm around, you can't talk about this because I'm uncomfortable. And so you need to monitor your language because I can't handle myself when you talk about that. And like, ugh, like that makes me want to vomit, because like, sorry, but I don't carry a list in my pocket of things that, okay, so when I'm around this person, I can't talk about this. And yes. No, like I'm not responsible for that. You're responsible for yourself. Right. And at the same time, like if those things are bothering you, that's probably a clue that you need to do some inner work to heal that, because that's the information that your body's giving you. That's not a caution tape that you're going to put up to not step into, that's something that's going to call you to more healing that needs to take place within, right? And for so many of us, like we get stuck we get stuck in those first three chakras, and we don't have safety. Excuse me. We set up boundaries and require other people to protect us through uncomfortable sensations, and then we give power to our emotions. And we have no control over ourselves, and we have no we don't take initiative of the ability that you have to create the life that you want and the life that's available for you. And so for a lot of us, we just get stuck, and again, this is all unconscious, and this is just the way we've protected ourselves, but like, we don't move on to love. We don't move on to truth. We don't move on to that clarity and the knowledge that is beyond those three things of protection, safety. You need to protect me. You need to make sure I'm safe. You're in control of my emotions, right? And there's nothing there that identifies you as your own being. And so, as you walk through this, and whether or not you believe in the chakras or not, you don't have to adopt it, right? I use it in my program as a skeleton to walk through the body. And again, you can take it or not as belief, but the way that I teach it, my hope is, and my intention is that you become so aware of the physical lines of where you begin and where you end. That is what you have control over in this life. And when it comes to working with women who have suffered the heartache of infidelity, that emotional enmeshment is intertwined so deeply that their lives are paused for sometimes decades in that place of distrust and second guessing, and never fully embodying their life and embracing the life that's available for them. And in that place, they're not doing anybody any good. They're not doing themselves good. That's not why they're here on earth. They're not doing their children good. They're not doing the world good. And that is, in essence, what as well as the healing, right? It takes 28 days to create new neural pathways. That's all it takes to create new neural pathways. So there is a path out of the trauma that you are stuck in, but also there's a beautiful life waiting for you. And when you identify yourself as a being, and as I teach you this sacred that you are, the more that you understand that, the more that your outer world changes, because you hold yourself with reverence and respect. And you are in control of your own life, and you demand, I love the word command, you command what you put out, and that all of that is going to come from all of this work that you're doing here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the way that I operate now, the way that I live my life, my mantra is self-betrayal is no longer an option, because that is where I lived for the majority of my life. I mean, certainly like in my marriage, I say, yes, he betrayed me, but I betrayed myself because I chose to not listen to my own truth and, just taking the truth that he was giving me. But in other aspects of my life, I wasn't honoring myself. So that it's like the way that I operate now is self-betrayal is no longer an option, because I am in tune with my body and what is telling me. And I mean, I learned so much from your course, and just meeting with you. I used to do the weekly meditations, and you just have these beautiful gems that you say things that would be, perceived as complicated, like boundaries for me was a thing that was really difficult to understand. And it isn't just me. I think it's difficult for a lot of people, because it is this concept, or I guess loose understanding, the boundaries are to control someone else, and they're not. They're really to keep us safe. And to your point, it's like I couldn't understand, do I need to make a list of all the things that he can't do? And if he doesn't do that, then this is going to be the consequence. And that in and of itself was exhausting. And then you're constantly operating on alert. You're having to find when he's doing something wrong. And one thing that you said was very simple, If I feel safe, I move towards you. If I don't, I won't. And for me, it's like, that makes sense. As long as I'm feeling safe, I will move towards that connection. If I don't, then I won't. And that, again, is just honoring myself and keeping myself safe. And that is something that I use. I'm no longer married, that relationship, didn't work out, but I use that just in my life in general, when it comes to work, when it comes to friendships, when it comes to just overall situations. If my body, my physical being, my emotional being, my mental being, my spiritual being does not feel safe or comfortable, then this situation is not in alignment with my highest good. And I must, I have to remove myself, or I have to do things to not put myself in that situation, because if I do, I'm dishonoring my body. And just again, like I said, your teachings to me have transcended just that state that I was in. There's things that I carried with me, beyond that. So yeah, when you talk about, ownership, I think, was me taking accountability of how I was walking and operating in life. And the minute that I give that control over to someone else, in order for me to feel this way, you can't do that, I'm giving my power away to someone. So it's kind of like taking that back. So yeah, a lot of what you said, again, I just carry with me beyond that relationship. And yeah, it's just a different connection with myself and my body and just my being. So
yeah. And I always say that when you wake up to yourself, you won't fall back asleep. Fair warning, right? Your life is never going to be the same again. But, I love what you're saying, because when I talk about that, like, if I feel safe, I'll be close. And if I don't, I won't. When we're in that place of trauma, we don't understand what safety even looks like. Everything's dangerous. And so that's where the healing of the brain has to come into, like, where you're not operating from that place of danger. And you can start to identify within yourself, if I do feel safe. And what that offers you is life. Right? Like, I do feel safe. I can actually enjoy this moment. I don't have to be on high alert. I don't have to put up my guards. I can laugh with my belly and smile with my teeth, right? And there's life that's happening while this trauma is all going on. We're just missing out on it when we're stuck in that trauma brain. And then when you get to the point where you've done that healing and you can navigate, if I feel safe, I'll be close. If I don't, I won't. That's how life works. That's every situation. And that trust that you're looking for outside of yourself in your relationship, you're looking to trust him. You don't quite trust him, blah, blah, blah. Like, that trust is found here. Because, like you said, like, the betrayal was for myself. I didn't listen to my body. I believed him over me. That was the first betrayal.
yes.
And when you can start to navigate and say, like, because I'm no longer in the place of danger within myself, I can trust that I'm going to show up and live this life when I'm safe. And I can trust that if I am in danger, I am going to take myself to safety. And that's the trust you're looking for. That's the trust that you're not going to find out there. That's the trust that's found right in here.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, and to your point, it's like you have to be able to almost see what safety looks like, and that safety is a possibility, because when you're in it, you just can't see that. And for me to understand what does it feel like when my body is safe, I had to experience that. So I can actually see the difference when I can actually have that awareness. Okay, right now I'm feeling unsafe, because I know what safety felt like. So yeah, I think that is first. And I'm assuming that the title of your book was done purposely in that way. Change your body, change your breath, because the body has to come first. Breath for me was something that was really difficult. For the longest time, I thought something was just wrong with my lungs. I thought maybe my lungs are underdeveloped because I can't take a deep breath. With my first pregnancy, I wanted to have a natural delivery, and I had, the birthing center. I did the Lamaze classes, the breathing, and I could just not take a deep breath. My entire life, I couldn't take a deep breath. It was always in my chest. And I had convinced myself something must be wrong with my body. But it was because I wasn't connected with my body. I can take deeper breaths now because I am connected with my body. So yeah, so I would assume
you're living.
I am living now. Yeah. So I want to say that I guess first you have to be able to connect with your body and have the relationship and have that safety before you can actually transform your breath.
Yep. Right. And that's where, this is different. And again, therapy has its absolute benefits, right? But there are therapists who will teach, prompt clients to do breathing exercises. But if your body is the container of your breath and your body's in this place of trauma, your breath is just going to mirror the anxiety that you're experiencing in your body. And that for a lot of people, that that causes more anxiety. And that even puts a
Mhm.
bad taste in people's mouth of, well, I tried breathing exercises before. And that's like, I understand their desire to help the client, but if the shape of your body, and this isn't like the size that you are, this isn't the weight that you are, it's literally the way that you hold yourself. And if you think about your body as the container of your breath, you have to change the way that you're navigating your life, the way that you're holding yourself in defensiveness or protection or armor. And that rigidness, has to crumble. And when it crumbles and you no longer need those walls to protect you, your body can expand from your toes to your head, from the front of your body to the back of your body, to the right side to the left side. Your fingertips can breathe, your feet can breathe, like everything, if you will, you can imagine the expanse and the connection of your breath. And breath is life, right? So again, like, change your body, change your breath, change your life. And just last night on one of my my call, my client was telling me that she was in her therapy session and her leg just started trembling. And she, before we started working together, when we were talking, she was telling me how angry she was and how resentful she was, and that she wasn't looking to forgive. And I love this, that she's doing this work in her body, because as she felt her leg moving, she just like stopped. And she just, like, when we kind of talked to this last night, like this, you can imagine like shaking it, breaking up that rigidness that you've had. And as you breathe, you're releasing all of that stuff that you've stored for years and years and shoved down and become more rigid and Tin Man-like. And when you can clear that out, when you found safety here, and that trembling leg is no longer a danger for you, and you try to stop it or shove it down or whatever it might be, like, when it can move through you, your breath is going to be different.
Mhm.
You're no longer holding that inside of you.
Thank you. And I know we're coming close to the end. So one, where can our audience find you? And second, if you had to choose, maybe describe just a couple of tips for someone who is not connected with their body and really not aware. What are some of the simple things that they can do to start building that relationship with their body?
Yeah. So I'm mainly on Instagram these days. You can find me at Sariah.Bastian. And I give a lot of free content there, as far as, again, like the niche that I work with women in infidelity, or who've suffered infidelity, and just bringing note to the panic that they're living in their life, and how that's not them being crazy, and that's not going to find the solution, that's trauma speaking, and they need to heal that first. And there's 3 steps that I love to teach people just at the beginning. It's called earth, body, soften, and then breathe. So it's this just 3 steps that I take to, when I first begin this. Is like, first, just feel where your feet are on the earth. Your body is, even if you're sitting, like, just notice the something, the object that's holding you and that's connected to the earth, and bring awareness to the line between where the earth is and where you are. And that's that earth body first step, connection. What that does is it takes you right out of your head and puts you right here in this moment. And then the invitation, the second invitation, is to soften. And that can just look like, X-ray up through your body, and just like, oh, I didn't even realize that my toes were, flat, my feet were flexed, and my, stomach was tight, my glutes were clenched, and my shoulders were up to my ears. And then you just kind of soften for just a minute, and the trust there, just that little bit of trust that the earth holds you. You don't need to hold yourself, you're held. Mm-hmm. And then with that gentle softening, it's very internal, breathe. And that's just the beginning shift of earth, body, soften, breathe, and then change your body, change your breath, change your life. And, I teach that the more that you give the earth, the stronger you become. And the more that you sit in this truth and this reality, the more true your life is. And then you can accept the life that's being given to you, for its fullness and its beauty. And you're not, your birthright is happiness. You
Mhm.
don't need to suffer. And through this deep connection with yourself, that internal happiness is found.
Thank you. As you were describing, I was like, Edwina, put your shoulders down. Yeah, thank you. That was beautiful. Yeah, and that's something that I carry with me. I mean, that grounding into the earth and just giving whatever you're carrying, you just away to it because she can hold it, she can sustain it, and she can nourish you. So thank you for that. Extremely appreciative. I will definitely put Sariah's information down on the notes on the YouTube channel. Thank you everyone for joining us. Really hope that everything that Sariah shared with us today really resonated with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Sariah, and your teachings. And again, just the amazing, human being that you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Healing Playhouse. I hope that after listening to this episode, you begin to tune in into how you are in relationship with your own body. How do you see your body? What words do you speak to it? Are you honoring it? Take a second to reflect on these questions as you ground yourself, soften, and breathe. I hope that you begin to see your body as the beautifully crafted and divine mechanism that it is. If you enjoy this episode, like, comment, and share for Healing Happens in Community. Until next time, keep loving yourself and keep healing. Edwina.